All right, I'm back with yet another quick Pauper deck tech. So this is a super fast, highly explosive Simic Affinity list. It's essentially mono blue, but we do splash a bit of green just simply for Carapace Forger. As just yet another cheap threat to have. So this is kind of like a glass cannon, hyper aggro, almost combo-ish version of Affinity. Really harking back to the old school classic affinity lists of the past, very much like even Mirrodin block standard affinity. Um, so it's definitely a very fun and very fast deck, which I enjoy playing a lot. And as you'll see in the gameplay videos that I've posted, it is capable of taking down some of the strongest decks in the format. Like a few minutes ago, I had a match against Rakdos Madness Burn, and we easily defeated them 2-0. So the deck is fairly straightforward. We are running 17 artifact lands. Then in terms of further ramp, we are running 4 copies of Springleaf Drum, which is 1 mana for an artifact. It has tap, tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So that's great for both ramp and mana fixing. Then, filling a similar role is Moonsnare Prototype, which is 1 blue for an artifact. It's very much like the Springleaf Drum, except you can also tap artifacts. So it says tap an untapped artifact or creature you control, add 1 colorless. So this isn't great for color fixing, but it is just further ramp. And then it also has the upside of having a channel ability. So you can pay 5 and discard it. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So that means in the early game, this is ramp. It just ups our essentially devotion to artifacts in the early game. And then in the late game, we can use it to disrupt our opponent's creatures a little bit, or well, just their non-land permanents in general. Or we can use it to, in a pinch, save one of our permanents in response to removal. Then one of our other artifact 1-drops, it's the Spell Bomb, which we are running 4 copies of. So it's 1 mana for an artifact, which has 2 activated abilities. The first is pay 1 blue, sacrifice it, return target creature to its owner's hand. The second is pay 1 generic, sacrifice it, draw a card. So this serves 2 functions, well, essentially 3 functions in the deck. Number 1, it's just an early artifact to, increase our affinity count, but then we can also use it to bounce our opponent's threats back to their hand, or we can bounce our own threats back to our hand in response to removal. And then secondly, in the late game, once we have enough artifacts that we no longer need this really on the board to increase our affinity count, we can just sack it to draw a card and, restock our hand a little bit and keep us going. Okay, we're running 4 copies of Ornithopter, just 0 mana for a 0/2 flying artifact creature. It's just so good in this kind of deck. To further have 0 mana ways of increasing the number of artifacts we have on the board, we have 2 copies of Welding Jar, which is also just really great in this shell at saving our threats, because it's 0 mana for an artifact that has sack it, regenerate target artifact. Then we're running at the moment 1 copy of Halo Hopper, which is 3 for a 3/2 artifact creature with Convoke, so your creatures can help cast it. Now, I will say that this list probably needs some optimization, and some of these card numbers are not necessarily ideal. Like, I'm not kind of sold on the 1 Halo Hopper, 2 Welding Jars, but only time will tell. Time and testing will tell what exactly is better. Then, as sort of an intermediate threat, we have 4 copies of Frogmite, just 4 for a 2/2 with Affinity. Then we're also running, of course, one of the best affinity cards, Thoughtcast, 5 mana for a sorcery with affinity, draw 2 cards. So obviously just very powerful at restocking our hand, keeping our engine going, and powering us along with our threats. And then we also have this pretty interesting card, Hard Evidence, which is 1 blue for a sorcery. It says create a 0/3 crab creature token and create a clue token. So the clue is an artifact that says pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card. So this card kind of fulfills 2 functions in that it's nice that it creates both a creature and an artifact. So the creature we can tap with Springleaf Drum, the artifact we can tap with Moonsnare Prototype. The creature is also a 0/3 blocker, which is nice against the many 2-power aggro creatures in the format. And then the clue is useful because in the early game it just increases our affinity count, but in the late game, like the Aether Spellbomb, we can just sack it to draw cards to, restock our hand. And then finally, the crux of the deck are our 12 heavy hitters. These are our win cons, and the game plan is essentially just to drop these on the board as many times, as early as possible, and just smack face with it. So we've got 4 Mern Forces, 7 for a 4/4 Affinity, 4 Carapace Forges, which is just 2 for a 2/2, but as long as you control 3 or more artifacts, it gets +2/+2, so it's basically always 2 for a 4/4. And then finally, our heaviest hitter is Gear Seeker Serpent, which is 7 mana for a 5/6, costs 1 less for each artifact we control, and we can pay 6 to make it unblockable until end of turn. So there you have it. There's the deck. It's just an incredibly straightforward deck, not that interactive. We essentially just want to drop a ton of artifacts really early and then play our reduced cost threats really early and hope that they're enough to just kill our opponent fast. So it's very much kind of a fun and relatively easy to play deck, which it's not obviously better than Grixis Affinity, but it's just a very different, more straightforward, more hyper aggro, more explosive play style, which I find very fun. Especially, it doesn't require that much thought, which makes it quite a pleasure to play. So I do highly recommend it if you enjoy this kind of play style. And as I said, the deck is pretty powerful. Like, it definitely can take on tier decks and win. So the sideboard is nothing crazy. We've got Metallic Rebuke, we've got Relic of Progenitus, which could even be mainboarded depending on the meta. We have Hydroblast, Dispel, and Galvanic Blast, which we could even possibly just be running some of these in the main board, but at the moment I'm just leaning into the, purely creature-based, non-interactive version of this deck. So yeah, there you have it. I shall end it there. As always, if you have suggestions for the deck, please let me know. If you test it out or a similar deck, let me know how that goes for you. If there are cards or decks you would like me to brew around, please let me know as well. And if you enjoy this video and want to keep up to date with the spicy lists that I always brew with, do consider subscribing. It's also a great way to support the channel. Alrighty, cool. Well, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.